Picture this, an empire that survived for over 1,000 years. It outlasted barbarian invasions, civil wars, plagues, and roughly 900 assassination attempts on its own emperors. And in the end, it wasn't some genius military strategy that finally took it down. It wasn't betrayal from within. It was a door, an actual physical door that somebody forgot to lock. That's it. That's the empire-ending plot twist. And by the time you're done watching this, you're going to be mad about it too. Let's back up, because to understand how dumb this ending really was, you need to understand just how impressive the thing that got destroyed actually was. This is the story of the Byzantine Empire, or as they preferred to call themselves, the Roman Empire, because technically they were right. When the western half of Rome collapsed in 476, the eastern half just kept going. Same legal system, same imperial title, same "we invented civilization, you're welcome" attitude, just now centered on a city called Constantinople instead of Rome. And Constantinople was not some backup capital. This city was an absolute unit of urban planning. Triple walls, a chain across the harbor to block enemy ships, massive cisterns to survive sieges. For 1,000 years, this place was basically unconquerable, and everyone who tried found that out the hard way. Arabs tried twice, failed both times. Bulgarians tried, failed. Crusaders, allies mind you, actually managed to sack it once in 1204, which is its own separate disaster of a story, but even that didn't kill the empire outright. It just badly wounded it. By the 1450s, the once massive Byzantine Empire had shrunk down to basically just the city of Constantinople and a few scraps of land around it. Imagine your company used to be a multinational corporation, and now it's just like one guy in an office renting a desk. That's the Byzantine Empire in 1453. Still standing, still proud, still absolutely convinced it was the greatest civilization on earth, but functionally just a city with a really impressive resume. And knocking on that city's door was a 21-year-old Ottoman Sultan named Mehmed the Second, who had one singular life goal: take Constantinople, not eventually, not maybe. He was borderline obsessed. He studied the city's defenses obsessively. He commissioned a custom cannon so massive it needed 60 oxen just to move it into position. A cannon so big it could reportedly be heard from over 100 miles away when fired. This kid was not messing around, so in April of 1453, Mehmed shows up with somewhere around 80,000 troops. The defenders inside Constantinople, maybe 7,000. Some sources say fewer. You're looking at odds so lopsided it's almost comedic, except it's about to get people killed. So, less funny. Now here's the thing that makes this story insane. For weeks the defenders actually held. 7,000 guys behind those legendary triple walls managed to repel wave after wave of Ottoman attacks. The walls did exactly what they were built to do 1,000 years earlier. Mehmed's giant cannon, despite being an engineering marvel, actually kept cracking under the stress of firing and had to be repaired between shots, which, relatable, honestly, even the Ottomans dragging their entire navy overland on greased logs to bypass that harbor chain, genuinely one of the most audacious military maneuvers in history, didn't break the city. The defenders were exhausted. They were outnumbered 11-1, and they were still winning the war of attrition. This is the part of the story where, if this were a movie, you'd be thinking, okay, they're actually going to pull this off, aren't they? They were not going to pull this off, because here's where we get to the door. Along the walls of Constantinople, there were several small postern gates, basically service doors, little side entrances used by soldiers to slip in and out during skirmishes without opening the massive main gates. One of these was called the Kirkoporta, a small gate near the northern section of the walls, in a part of the defenses that wasn't considered a major weak point. It wasn't meant to be a grand entrance, it was a side door. The kind of thing you'd use to sneak out for a smoke break, not defend an empire through. And at some point during the chaos of the final assault, and historical accounts genuinely differ on exactly how this happened, which somehow makes it worse. This door gets left open. Some accounts say defenders used it for a counter-sortie and simply failed to secure it behind them in the panic. Other versions suggest it was just overlooked amid the sheer exhaustion and chaos of non-stop fighting. Either way, a literal door in a wall that had survived 1,000 years of history's greatest armies was just unlocked, left ajar. Nobody's problem, apparently, until it very much became everybody's problem. Ottoman soldiers noticed it because, of course, they did. You leave a side door open during the final hours of the most important siege of the century, somebody's going to walk through it. A small group of troops slipped inside, and once you have troops inside triple walls that were specifically designed to keep people outside, the entire logic of the defense collapses instantly. It's like installing a state-of-the-art home security system and then leaving a window open in the garage. The alarm doesn't matter anymore. The locks don't matter anymore. They're already in the house. Panic spreads through the defenders almost immediately because nothing breaks morale faster than realizing the enemy is now behind you instead of in front of you. And in the confusion, the commander of the defense, a Genoese soldier named Giovanni Giustiniani, who had been fighting brilliantly up to this point, gets seriously wounded and has to be evacuated. Whether that happened directly because of the breach or just around the same catastrophic time frame, historians argue about, but the timing could not have been worse. His retreat, combined with word spreading that the walls had been breached somewhere, caused something close to a full collapse in defensive morale. Soldiers who had held their positions against impossible odds for weeks suddenly started abandoning their posts because when you think the wall is already broken, why keep dying to defend it? And once that psychological dam breaks, it's basically over. Ottoman forces pour in through multiple points along the walls, not because they finally cracked the legendary defenses through brilliant tactics, but because the defenders' own confidence cracked first, triggered by one door nobody locked. The last Roman emperor, Constantine XI, reportedly tore off his imperial regalia and threw himself into the final fighting rather than be captured, dying somewhere in the chaos, his body never definitively identified. 1,000 years of continuous Roman governance, and the final emperor's actual death isn't even clearly documented. That's how chaotic this collapse was. By the end of May 29th, 1453, Constantinople had fallen. Mehmed rode into the city, went straight to the Hagia Sophia, this absolutely massive cathedral that had stood as the heart of Christian Constantinople for 900 years, and had it converted into a mosque, essentially on the spot. The Byzantine Empire, the direct continuation of the Roman Empire, the thing that had survived Attila, survived civil wars, survived the literal collapse of its western half over 1,000 years earlier, was done. Not because it lost a fair fight against overwhelming odds, although technically it did also do that. It's done because somebody left a door open. And look, I want to be fair here for a second because it's easy to sit here a few centuries later and clown on some anonymous defender for a door mistake during the single most stressful, chaotic, exhausting night of their entire life. These were people who had been fighting nonstop for weeks against an army over 10 times their size, running on no sleep, watching friends die, hearing that literally the biggest cannon anyone had ever built was firing at their walls. Somebody forgetting to lock a side door during that? Extremely human. You've definitely left your front door unlocked after a way less stressful week than defending the last remnant of the Roman Empire against 80,000 troops. But here's what makes this genuinely one of the dumbest ways an empire has ever fallen. It's not that the mistake happened. Mistakes happen in every siege, every war, every collapse in history. It's that everything else about this defense actually worked. The walls held for weeks against a purpose-built superweapon cannon. The defenders, hilariously outnumbered, inflicted serious losses on a force many times their size. Every major, sophisticated system built to protect this city functioned exactly as intended. And the thing that actually ended over 1,000 years of continuous Roman civilization wasn't a superior strategy or an unstoppable weapon. It was a small, unremarkable side gate that somebody just didn't get around to closing. Think about that ratio for a second. 1,000 years of history on one side, an unlocked door on the other, and the door won. There's something almost darkly funny about the fact that history's most powerful, most enduring empires rarely get taken down by the thing you'd expect. Not always the bigger army, not always the smarter general. Sometimes it really is just the smallest, most mundane detail nobody thought mattered until it was the only thing that did. Constantinople survived giant cannons and armies 11 times its size, and in the end, all it took was a door somebody forgot about. So, next time you're absolutely certain you've covered every base, locked every door, prepared for every scenario, maybe just double-check the one thing you assumed didn't matter, because somewhere in Constantinople in 1453, somebody thought the exact same thing, right up until it ended an empire.